Please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of Cabinet. It's a special meeting, as you know. It's Tuesday the 18th of August and it's 9:30, and the meeting is being held under the regulations which came into effect on the 4th of April 2020 in response to the COVID-19 situation. My name is Councillor Lucille Thompson and I chair this meeting and I'm leader of the council. Just a few housekeeping reminders to run through. Can I ask everyone present that your microphones remain muted and your camera is turned off whilst you're not addressing the meeting, as this will reduce background noise and avoid any unintentional disturbances. Like we've just had. Please can I also advise that the open parts of the meeting are being audio recorded and live streamed from the council's website, and in addition a video recording of the meeting will be uploaded to the council's YouTube channel after the meeting. Cabinet members and officers, where appropriate for each item, please use the chat function of the meeting to indicate you wish to speak or to raise a point of order or explanation, and I will invite you then to speak at the appropriate time. Each member will be invited to speak in turn, therefore I would encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. When speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please make sure that you reference the page or page number. Thank you very much. Please note that the duration of this virtual meeting is approximately 2 hours, and any business not conducted after this time will be deferred to an alternative date or the next meeting. Final point, if Cabinet members wish to leave the meeting at any point, could they please make themselves known to me through the chat function? I will announce to the meeting that you are to leave the meeting. So firstly, can I ask the Democratic Services Officer to undertake a roll call of members of Cabinet to confirm who is present this morning?
Thank you, Chair. Members, I'll just call out your names in alphabetical order. If you could just confirm that you're present in the meeting, please. Councillor Cutler.
I am present.
Councillor Ferguson.
Good morning, present.
Councillor Lerney.
Good morning, present.
Councillor Porter.
Good morning, present.
Councillor Prince.
Good morning, present.
Councillor Todd.
Good morning, present.
And Councillor Thompson.
I'm present, yes.
Thank you, Chair. That's all members of Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Apologies for absence. I believe we're all here, so no apologies for absence need to be recorded. Item number 2, membership of Cabinet committees. Again, I'm not aware of any changes at the moment. Item number 3, declaration of interests. Are there any interests to be declared?
Yes, it's a non-prejudicial interest in it's Councillor Jackie Porter here, because I'm also a county councillor.
Thank you very much.
And same for me as a county councillor, Martin Todd.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Todd.
And I'd like to say that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest on item 8, the SHELAA paper, and will leave the meeting for that item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. That's noted, and we'll let you know when we've, well, obviously you can leave the meeting when we introduce the item, but we will let you know when that item has finished and you can rejoin. Thank you. Requests for invited councillors to speak. I have quite a long list of councillors who I will call at the appropriate item. Thank you. And the next item is minutes of the previous meetings. They are in the agenda pack, and I'm assuming everyone has read them. Are members of Cabinet happy to agree the minutes as set out in the agenda?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
There is also an exempt minute. Are you happy to agree the exempt minute also?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much. Thank you. We now move on to item number 6, which is public participation. And I've got a notification that 5 members of the public wish to speak. And I believe they are all speaking on item number 8. So first of all, I'd like to call Keith Gaultier to unmute his microphone and turn his camera on and make his representation, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, councillors. My name is Keith Gaultier. I live in Swanmore and have an involvement with a number of organisations concerned with maintaining the very strong identity of villages. I wish to speak about the sites in the SHELAA report that lie within designated settlement gaps. The report acknowledges that the total number of sites is considerably in excess of what is required to be included in the local plan. I would therefore urge the Council to continue to exclude settlement gap sites from all future development proposals, as has been done in the past. The SHELAA report includes some 285 sites for potential development, 50 of which are located in areas designated as settlement gaps. 14 of these lie around Swanmore village, and I'd like to look at 5 examples where additional aspects need to be taken into consideration. They are SH 11, 40 and 41, SW 8 and 10. Every one of these settlement gap sites is outside the Swanmore and Shedfield settlement boundaries. All rely on access from Lower Chase Road, which is a narrow, hedge-lined, winding country lane that is less than 2 car widths in places, with blind corners, no verges, pavements or streetlights for the majority of its length. The declared density of 30 dwellings per hectare would be disproportional overdevelopment of the area compared to neighbouring properties. These sites are all near the South Downs National Park and should therefore be taken into account the character of the park itself. The development of SW8 was refused on appeal in 2017 on many of these grounds. Additionally, the whole of SWA10 is part of the designated wildlife corridor between the South Downs National Park and the Moors SSSI site to the southwest. It's frequented by very diverse wildlife and has a high level water table which forms the natural groundwater drainage link from the Downs to the moors, and any development here would risk contamination of the SSSI site. The SHELAA report, paragraph 712, states that the number of sites is far in excess of what is likely to be required in the new local plan, and this was reiterated in the summary, paragraph 912, with a comment that only a small fraction of sites need to be allocated for development. Winchester Council's LPP1 policy, CP18, seeks to protect the settlement gaps, and policy MTRA2 requires that new development conserves the identity of settlements. I would therefore urge the Cabinet to continue the Council's decision of 2017 and preserve all the settlement gaps throughout the whole of the Council area, in recognition that villages need to keep their identity as per the Council's policy documents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaultier. That's really helpful. Can I ask you now to turn your camera off and mute your microphone? You are obviously able to stay in the meeting if you wish, or if you don't and you prefer, you can leave by pressing the telephone symbol with the red background. But thank you very much for your contribution, and I'm sure that the Cabinet member will respond when she makes her presentation. Can I now call on Mr. Patrick Davis, please?
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
I should like to comment on the same paper. It seems to me spectacularly unfortunate timing that you brought forward this paper today, when it looks as though your long promised paper on the local plan review itself, which we've been expecting, has perhaps wisely been put on hold, presumably in view of the government's new planning white paper. Back in March, at the first meeting of your local plan working group, I did question the likely changing role of local plans in view of the government's emerging intentions. With pressure now from central government for local councils such as yourselves to drastically increase housing numbers, I suggest it is perhaps dangerous to accept the recommendations as they're written in your report today. It clearly was written before the white paper, as indeed was the whole of the SHELAA introduction. The wording used throughout the SHELAA of sites immediately available for development will, in my view, now be used as an open invitation for some major developments to jump the gun by bringing forward their schemes with seeming encouragement from central government to build more houses in areas like ours where there are very high house prices. In the previous local plan, you were able to resist with local support such ideas as the Mitchell devastation proposal, but that threat remains. But it is now joined by new threatening schemes immediately adjoining Winchester itself. Several major new sites to the north, then to the south. There are new schemes which could lead to a solidly built up area from south of Winchester right through to Hursley, with perhaps something approaching 7,000 houses. What I'm saying is that we have to be exceedingly careful now not to encourage more development. That's totally inappropriate, because the whole SHELAA exercise was dependent on the old type of local plan. I know it says that no land is actually allocated for development, but that is not going to carry as much weight now, because we don't know the sort of material that's now needed for the new likely proposals. And I simply say to you that it'd be wise to shelve this report, not accept the recommendations which seem to imply much greater weight for the desires of developers, particularly in the situation where central government is saying places like Winchester must build many more houses. I think we need great caution not to fall into a trap that the developers will set for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Again, that's a very useful contribution. And as I say, we will be having a discussion about this paper just a little in a few minutes' time when we actually get to it. So I'm sure that Councillor Porter will be addressing some of the points that you've made. Please, you're welcome to stay on this call and continue with the meeting. But as I said before, if you prefer and you want to leave, I know that you know how to do this. But please, you can do so by pressing the telephone symbol with the red background. And thank you very much. I now call on Tessa Robertson to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
I can't quite see myself, so I'm not sure if my camera's on.
I don't think it is at the moment. No, we can't see you.
There we go.
Yes, that's
How's
it.
that? Is that working?
Yes, it is.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Chair. If you take the train from London to Winchester, looking out of the window, what do you see? Urban sprawl, suburban back gardens and new housing estates and office developments. It's not until you leave Basingstoke behind that you come to real countryside, a large stretch of the Hampshire Downs, extending all the way south to the city. And yet this area has been under threat for 30 years. The Diva Society was formed in 1990 as the local amenity society for the Hampshire Downs and the Diva Valley, in direct response to Eagle Star's proposal to build a large new town on farmland it owned around Micheldever and Micheldever Station. Working with our many supporters, we have successfully opposed the new town plans and have also worked hard to ensure that local development is needed and appropriate, and to celebrate the area's landscape, history, environment and wildlife. Over the last 3 decades, Micheldever Newtown has been heavily promoted by the landowners through structure plans, regional plans and local plans, and even through central government's eco-towns policy. All rejected a new town at Micheldever as being the wrong place to accommodate housing need and with unacceptable impacts on traffic levels and the local and regional economy. In 2017, the estate and its farmland were sold to the billionaire Irish racehorse breeder John Magna. The following year, the Magna family's developers, the O'Keefe Group, responded to the council's call for sites by submitting plans for a 6,000 home new town on the same acreage. That proposal is in the SHELAA you're discussing today, but increased to over 8,000 homes using the council's density criteria for sites in the countryside. Understandably, there is considerable concern both locally and further afield in the district. The Diva Society has over 5,000 supporters on its mailing list, resolutely opposed to a new town and the catastrophic effect it would have on the community and the area. We understand and support the need for new homes, particularly affordable homes, in the district. As councillors will know, Micheldever has built some 70 affordable homes over the last 10 years, far more than most small communities. We also understand that councillors and officers face a difficult task reconciling the pressures on the district. But is the north of the district where Winchester's people want to live, where the jobs are? With thousands of homes being built by Basingstoke Council only a few miles from Micheldever Station and thousands more planned, would a new town there simply end up as a feeder for Basingstoke rather than providing homes for people in the district? We urge you, when making decisions about the district's future growth, to think hard about that large green area you see from the train, the only dark sky area between Basingstoke and Southampton. Is it the right place for major growth? And is the permanent and irrevocable loss of this large green area a decision worth taking? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. As I've said to other speakers, you're quite welcome to continue to be part of the meeting. But if you do wish to leave, then it's the telephone symbol with the red button. But thank you very much for your contribution. I now call on Mr. Andrew Adams to address us, please.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Andy Adams. I'm a councillor on Micheldever Parish Council, speaking on our item 8, as is everyone else. I'm sure that we are not alone amongst the local councils within the district being very concerned about the implications of the recently proposed changes to national planning policies that seem to pull the rug from under the local plan process. And as has been said, the timing of the SHELAA document is somewhat unfortunate. The draft SHELAA contains 12 sites within our parish that have been identified as suitable for development. Some of these were expected whilst others weren't, and in some cases have been somewhat obviously misrepresented. The railway land at Micheldever Station, identified as MI12 for instance, is identified as immediately available for development of up to 196 homes. But I'll tell you now, because I can see it from my window, that it includes, amongst other things, a substation powering every mainline train that's running past as we speak, an active railway infrastructure that would require significant statutory consultation and procedures to release. But beyond those issues, the Parish Council has always been proactive in working with the City Council, the Housing Trust and others to develop and support schemes to deliver the housing required to meet local need and to play our part in helping the City Council meet the wider needs of the district within the local plan, including bespoke affordable housing schemes and significant commercial development in our villages in recent years. And we continue to do this, and we're in the process of concluding our latest housing needs survey. So it's immensely frustrating that as the Parish Council, along with the Diva Society and others, we've worked so hard over so many years to show that we are indeed meeting and exceeding local housing need, and that a major new settlement in the area is neither wanted nor required. So we find ourselves yet again having to defend against suggestions, including from the Council, of a mega development at Micheldever, despite engaging fully with the local plan process throughout all its stages over recent years. I'm sure our frustration is shared in other communities such as Hursley, where development out of all proportion with current settlements is consistently proposed. So I would ask, what more do we need to do? The subject of neighbourhood plans has been discussed, with some potential central government financial support for that process, but we would worry about the potential resource available beyond the financial to support local councils with the logistics of those sort of exercises, especially if multiple parish and town councils feel the need to go down that road. All within the 30-month timescale proposed for the local plan under the new proposals, given the relative lack of success with these up to this point. So for us, it would be reassuring to hear how the City Council plan to protect and champion our countryside and those who live in it, while supporting us to grow organically as responsible and sustainable rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. As I said to previous speakers, you're very welcome to continue to remain in the meeting, but if you choose not to, then it's the telephone symbol with the on the red background to hit. Final speaker from members of the public is Bo Priestley. Are you there, Bo?
Thank you, Chair. I can see that Bo Priestley's in the meeting.
Okay. Bo, you need to unmute yourself and turn your camera on, but we're not hearing anything from you at the moment. I think perhaps we'll come back to you, Bo. I don't know what's quite happened there, but certainly everything's been working up until now. So I think perhaps we'll move on and we'll come back to you just a bit later. But thank you to all the members of the public who have made their contributions. We will be having our debate on the SHELAA literally in a few minutes' time. But before that, I'd just like to move to item number 7, which is Leader and Cabinet Member announcements. I have no announcements to make, but I believe a number of portfolio holders do. And the first one is Councillor Prince, please.
Good morning and thank you, Leader. Welcome everybody. I'm pleased to take this opportunity to update you on the Council's plans for reopening both of Winchester's council-run leisure facilities at River Park and Meadowside to members of the public as of 1st of September. We believe that sports and leisure facilities are crucial for our residents to support health and well-being, not least after the experience of recent months. As you will be aware, COVID-19 has presented some serious challenges for the leisure sector and operators, having affected all public leisure centres in the UK. At the last Cabinet meeting, it was decided that everyone active would take early control of River Park Leisure Centre and Meadow Leisure Centre. I'm pleased that we have been able to sign contracts with both places and everyone active to, as agreed by Cabinet. Since then, everyone active has put in place a plan to reopen Winchester's leisure facilities at the beginning of next month in a safe and secure way. I would like to thank the staff of both centres ahead of reopening. Also to thank the staff at Winchester City Council who have put in many hours working on this, and for customers for your patience. We know many of you are keen to get back to using the facilities, whether you're a swimmer or a gym goer. We're so pleased to welcome you back now. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind members that we should be confident about the future. We have a fantastic new facility being built in Winchester that will benefit the entire district. Having stood atop of the leisure centre in recent weeks, I can tell you that the 400 solar panels have been successfully installed, another major milestone for the project. We continue to work towards having the facility open in spring 2021. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Prince. And yes, I would just like to add, opening both River Park and Meadowside on the 1st of September is going to be a fantastic achievement and brilliant for our residents. It's a really good piece of news, so thank you. I'd now like to call on Councillor Porter, who I know has got an announcement to make, and a number of our public speakers have obviously I know kind of what she's going to say, and a number of our public speakers have already made reference to this. So I think all those who are still on the call and listening will find this of interest. Thank you, Councillor Porter.
Thank you. And before I start, just wanted to say as well that the Aquid Nationally Significant Infrastructure Project is having its first day online as a public inquiry. It's really interesting. We're the first one in the country to be doing it this way online. And I'd just like to thank our officers who've worked really hard to get us to the point, and who have worked really hard with Denmead, Hambledon and Newlands parish councils and the local councillors to make sure that their views are represented by our officer today. Thank you. The second thing I'd like to raise is about the impact of the white paper and the effect that had on our expectation to bring the strategic issues and options paper to this cabinet today. As of Thursday, August the 6th, we were still expecting to do that, but having read the two papers published on that day by the government, by Monday 10th of August, it became clear that using the old assumptions wouldn't be useful or feasible in the future local plan for Winchester District. The revisions required in that local plan document, white paper, are not simply technical, they require major policy decisions. It's for that reason that I'm not presenting the draft SIO to you, the Cabinet, this August. In fact, I feel it would have been dishonest to take the public down that road, knowing that the government's intention is to increase the number of local authority planning permissions given every year from 187,000 to 300,000. That's 160% uplift. This increase is so large that it has strategic implications because substantially more land will be needed to be allocated for development. And the white paper planning for the future was published for consultation just as we're about to publish our options to meet modest growth on the 6th of August. The white paper proposes significant changes to the planning system, which I think Patrick Davis has just alluded to, including a change in way in which the land is allocated for development and the way it controls that development is implemented. The government is seeking responses to the white paper by October the 29th, 2020, with a view to adoption in going through Parliament by 2022. And I do urge you all to take an active part, and I'm sure the speakers that have spoken already will be taking an active part in responding to that consultation. I'm not going to be discussing the merits of the white paper today, but we will be discussing it at our response at the Local Plan Advisory Group on the 14th of September. We'll be discussing it with members, parish council and town forum, and putting forward our final response at our meeting, our next cabinet meeting at the end of September. The immediate issue for the City Council, however, is the impact of the proposal on the timescale for the preparation of the new local plan. The white paper proposes that every local planning authority will be required to commence work on a new form local plan once the government legislates for the new system, and the preparation for that new plan will have a mandatory 30-month maximum timetable. The white paper states that the first new form plans are expected to be in place before the end of the current Parliament. The newly published methodology for arriving at the housing requirement is extremely important in this context. In a separate consultation, which is going to be finishing earlier, the end date is the 1st of October, the government proposes to revise the standard method by which a local authority determines their housing requirement. That revised figure is going to be used as soon as the government updates its necessary regulation, which it can do any time after the close of legislation, so it could be as early as this November or December 2020. This is extremely important. From the proposed new formula, it would appear that Winchester's housing requirement would increase to something in the region of over 1,000 dwellings per annum. If and when it's confirmed, this is a number for which our local plan would have to plan, and for which we'd have to calculate our 5-year land supply. This is a huge increase on the figure of 664 that was estimated will be required under the current formula, and under which the current SIO, the Strategic Issues and Option Paper, was based. So a new form plan is potentially only 1 year later than an old form plan. We looked at the options old and then new immediately afterwards, or to hold over the existing plan, do the work and plan and wait for the new legislation to be enacted and produce a new form plan as soon as possible, possibly with a government supported pilot. I share the officer's view that the changes proposed to the plan system and the increase in housing numbers which the council face are so significant that continuing the old route plan would be challenging and, as I said, to somewhat dishonest. It's not a route to avoid delivering a higher housing number. It has no advantages in clarity or community engagement, given the high level of debate there will be about the new system, and may not even produce a plan much quicker than pausing and using a new form when implemented. There are plenty of other things to be doing, including publishing the SHELAA, which we're doing today, so that our 30-month process is smooth and effective. And so for that reason, I'm afraid we pulled that paper today.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Gosh, that was a very long announcement, but I think it was definitely worth, yet it needed to be said. I agree. Okay. I've had a message from Bo Priestley. Unfortunately, she can't join us today. She's having difficulties with her tech, so she's going to drop me a line instead. So that's just to let everybody know. Okay, I believe that is the end of the announcements. I don't believe any other portfolio holders have announcements to make, in which case we will go on to item number 8, the updated Strategic Housing and Employment Land Availability Assessment. Yes, Councillor Cutler will be leaving the meeting for this item, so thank you very much. So Councillor Porter, if you'd like to introduce the item, please.
Thank you. And before I do, I'd just like to take the points that were made on board by Keith Gauthier, Patrick Davis, Tessa Robertson and Andrew Adams. And just to say that we have spoken to Bo Priestley, and so I am very well aware of her, of what she wishes to say. And the recommendation includes the possibility of correcting any small and minor amendments which any councillors may find in what's been written. It's a very long paper and there may be small amendments with numbers and references, which if anybody has any, they should point out immediately before we put it on the website. So what is a SHELAA? It's the Strategic Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment. I just wanted to stress the points laid out in the introduction to the SHELAA itself. As it says, it's about land availability for economic activity and homes. It's not about allocation. Each of the sites that's been put forward by developers lays out in detail where it is, its size, its using for housing or employment, and the maximum capacity, which is done to a set of very prescribed densities and are not necessarily, as Mr. Gauthier explained, are not necessarily what the densities would be that would be acceptable for that community. The SHELAA only identifies those sites which have been identified to submitted to the council. It's the developer's wish list. It does not allocate sites for development. To give some idea of the size of each site, the SHELAA lists the number of homes that this could accommodate as a guideline. The densities, as I said, are variable to reflect the district's character. The purpose of the SHELAA is to make public those sites. It is not a list of sites that the developer intends to develop. It sets out in paragraph 3 about the methodology, and there's a flow chart to show how the final sites will be decided upon. Its purpose is to enable realistic assumptions about how much land might be available, and if the council has enough land to supply its 5-year supply in future, and that will still be there in the new white paper. The National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, states that a local authority should have a clear understanding. That's the fire alarm, which is a test, by the way, I think. Yes? So the National NPPF states that a local authority should have a clear understanding of available land in their borough, with a clear provision of 5 years land supplying the various areas of the city and its viability as a development site. And that NPPF is going to be strengthened in its value rather than diminished. The SHELAA only covers part of the Winchester district, which isn't in the national park. So if you take my hand as the whole of the Winchester district and the national park fills where my other hand covers, you can see that actually the amount of land we've got to supply the number of homes that may be needed is very much diminished. But the national park will also have to look at their plan as part of the new changes as well. Paragraph 4.8 describes the information required for each site and how each site was reviewed against the high-level environmental constraints. Those are detailed in 4.12. Just as a point, tables 6 and 7, the titles have been swapped, and actually the recommendation allows for me to make small non-material revisions like this. Subject to the approval of the SHELAA today, each of the site's owners will be contacted to find out more information, including the real availability. These details will be noticed as site constraints in the future. There are many more sites on this list than we need at this stage. The issues and options would have informed us as we looked at those sites to decide how and where we can allocate land for houses, homes and jobs. The paper is a factual document. It's just factual, and if approved, it will be on the council's web pages as a public document feeding into the local plan. The new local plan period runs from 2018 to March 2038. And initial work shows that there is enough land here to cover 44,315 homes in the plan's lifetime. This is obviously far higher than we need, and we're likely to need in around 10,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter, and apologies to all for the test of the fire alarm. Of course, it's Tuesday and we've changed our day for Cabinet, so we have overlooked that. I now have quite a long list of councillors who would like to speak on this item. The first up is actually Councillor Evans, but I don't believe she's been able to join us, so we may return to her a bit later to see whether she's been able to get on the call. So the next person is Councillor Bell, please. And just to remind you, councillors, that you have a total of 5 minutes, please. Councillor Bell.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to address today's Cabinet meeting, and thank you to the portfolio holder and the strategic planning officers for accepting a few minor corrections that I had forwarded on the SHELAA. I am acutely aware that the publication by the government of not one but two new white papers on planning last Friday has given our strategic planning officers additional work just when they were ready to come forward with some proposals to launch the Winchester local plan process. In the light of these white papers, I believe it is now back to the drawing board, as Councillor Porter has explained, and the local plan will have to be developed under different regime, albeit not yet approved by Parliament, and public consultation will have to be deferred. By way of personal background, I am a parish councillor for Hursley and a ward councillor for Badger Farm and Oliver's Battery ward, which includes Hursley, Otterbourne and Compton and Shawford. In other words, containing all the green SHELAA submissions south of Winchester town. In 2010-11, I was Cabinet Member for Planning and am therefore closely familiar with the current or former local plan process, except that as of Friday, everything changes. It's my ward councillor role to speak up for the area that I represent, and that's why I'm here. It's essential that any new development within Winchester District is not only well built, using the most energy efficient construction techniques, has a high proportion of affordable housing and indeed social rented accommodation, but is also situated in sustainable locations where there is good transport and other infrastructure, and where additional housing will help communities to thrive and not swamp them. I am, of course, aware that submissions to the SHELAA document are simply what promoters and landowners wish to throw into the pot. They do not represent in any way strategic decisions on allocations, although that is difficult for the public to accept. Looking at the 2020 document and specifically the map on page 22, we note that not only is Winchester constrained to the east by the South Downs National Park, but also that very little land has come forward in this iteration, because it did in the past. In this iteration, very little land has come forward to the west of the city. This is not strategic. A few years ago, WINAC produced a useful map with concentric circles showing walkability distances from the edge of the city centre, from the edge of the city rather, to the centre. And that map showed that walkability did extend a little westwards, but the southern end of Romsey Road, at about 2 miles, was at the limit of walkability. Beyond that, bus or bicycle would be needed, but anyone who knows the topography will know that there are huge dips and hills through Pitt and also through Compton, and it's only cyclable by the Superfit or with electric assistance. On the A3090, the bus service has been reduced due to COVID-19, although we hope it will be restored. Pitt Park and Ride has been full to capacity since it opened. There's no rail service on this side of the district and ward. Therefore, any development south of the city in this direction is likely to increase private car use on routes such as Romsey Road and Badger Farm Road, which are congested at the best of times and gridlocked whenever there's a hold up on the motorway. The very large parcel of land submitted around Hursley Village begins at Miller's Lane, south of Oliver's Battery and the golf course. It is not connected to Winchester City nor to Oliver's Battery. Apart from the busy A3090 for part of its length, it is bounded and crossed by single track lanes, some without passing places. In Hursley Village Centre, these narrow lanes become even more restricted by vehicle parking and pedestrian use. The only viable access to a development in any proximity to Hursley would have to be from Poles Lane to the south or from the A3090 north of the village, both roads subject to excessive speeding. A glance at the village map shows that the location of IBM Hursley Park means that expansion to the west is also impossible. Hursley Parish Council has engaged with Community Action Hampshire in recent years in respect of exception housing in the village centre, and the preparation of our parish plan has also considered a small amount of market housing, both of which would enhance the viability and sustainability of the village. Successive housing needs analyses have come up with very modest numbers. Needless to say, we did not consider 5,000 houses a suitable number. I'd just like to touch briefly on my other area.
5 minutes.
Councillor Bell, unfortunately, you've reached your 5 minutes. Okay. So
I could make up for Bo not being there for the Bushfield. Never mind. Finish.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Sorry to cut you off, but we've got quite a long list of people who are keen to speak. The next person on my list is Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Leader, for this opportunity to speak. And sorry about the halo in the background. It's quite unintentional, believe you me. Yeah, boy, isn't SHELAA a Pandora's box? I don't envy your deliberations over how you're going to choose the sites. But I think as far as looking at the local plan, in the years I've lived in the southern parishes in Winchester, we've seen various iterations of planning ranging from Buchanan Solent City, which was abandoned or thrown out, and yet that is what has developed piecemeal rather than being a planned city. We now call it Push Area, of course, to the Hampshire planning introducing, of course, the major development areas, southern parishes, and the North Winchester development. Hampshire, prior to the 1974, was looking at developing market towns with homes and workplaces, sustainable development. Now, there's nothing new in that, and indeed, I'm sure, or at least I hope, that that is going to be part of your deliberations when you start choosing these sites. It comes down to, quite frankly, exactly what settlement you want in Winchester District. Do you want sustainable settlements? Do you want development integrated into those settlements rather than just tacked on piecemeal? Do you want an accurate database? Because, as I've said to you earlier on in the last week, there are a number of sites in the SHELAA document that already have planning permission and are either being built on or waiting to be built on. So there's an accuracy of detail there which could lead to confusion, not only locally, but of course with strategic planners that are not aware. Now, as Councillor Bell quite rightly pointed out, and indeed the Diva Society has also pointed out, no one wants houses in their own patch. We used to call us NIMBYs. I'm sorry if that offends, but it comes down to not in my backyard, I guess. We're all saying that. But the southern parishes have accepted 2 major development areas. Wickham, 250 houses, Waltham Chase, 250 houses, Swanmore, 250 houses, Denmead, 250 houses. We've got our share, and as Mr. Gautier quite rightly said, we're now looking at the next tranche of housing likely to be filling the gaps between the local gaps between the villages. Now, is that desirable? Now, I would argue not. It's not desirable at all, and that's got to be a consideration. Equally, what are you doing about the disseminated settlements of Durley, of Curdridge, of Sherrill Heath? Now, there are a lot of sites in those areas. Are you changing those into development areas or adjuncts of Hedge End or Eastleigh? Because, quite frankly, politically speaking, those are just not vote winners' decisions. So it goes back to basically, do you want sustainable development? Do you want passive houses, green housing developments? Do you want to reduce commuting, in which case settlements need developed workspaces? There need to be the market towns particularly, as well as Winchester. Let's not forget Winchester and its central place within the district. These comments that I'm making applies to Winchester as any other H2 settlement like Alsford and the ones I've already mentioned. So please, when you're coming out to the parishes for consultation, please, on behalf of the parishes, make these consultations meaningful, not planning officers, strategic officers sitting there and telling the parishes what they have to have. We know we have to have houses, but we want sustainable settlements. We don't want a new town involving Shedfield, Sherrill Heath, Waltham Chase and Swanmore, or an extension of Hedge End into Durley or into Curdridge. Please take these ideas and messages on board. Thank you, Leader, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pearson, and for fitting your comments into the five minutes as well. That was well done. Okay. I now call on Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for the time to speak today. I've been involved with local plans since 1983 with the Denmead local plan, followed by the 96, the local district plan, and every other plan that's come out of Winchester since. My one major concern is the lack of discussion with parish councils. We suddenly have a SHELAA document issued which presents a series of possible problems. There are some sites in it that are yes. There are some sites in it where did these come from situation. Councillor Pearson was correct that Denmead, like many other parishes, have accepted fairly substantial numbers. I would say that Denmead's probably accepted the most, because not only is the 250 that's been that Councillor Pearson mentioned, but there is also the 3,500, 1.5 miles up the road from Denmead, which is part of Denmead, and equally so part of Southwark and Wickham parishes. In the light of the changes that have taken place over the past 12 months, the government white papers, and the proposed increase in numbers of residential properties required, how vulnerable is our current local plan, and how longer extra time will be given to produce the new strategic plan? I trust we won't be going down the route of another local authority in the not too far away from us. Equally so, how will this affect our land supply? We've heard that the amount that's been identified by the SHELAA is quite extensive. However, the 5-year land supply seems to get used up very, very quickly if we are not careful. And thirdly and lastly, it is important that every community within the district has the same opportunity of growth, i.e. that each community will have a percentage, an equal percentage of growth, and that there are no easy options to ensure that the smaller communities carry the burden, as they have done very often in the past. I thank you for the opportunity to speak and trust that these questions can be answered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reid. I'm sure that Councillor Porter will address those when we come on to questions during the debate as well on this particular item. I now call on Councillor Brooke.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. So I'm speaking specifically about the SHELAA as opposed to the local plan surrounding it, because we all know that the release of the SHELAA can often cause unnecessary worry amongst residents, as demonstrated by the number of public speakers today, I suspect. But especially if it's the first time a field near their house has been included, or if a village is suddenly completely surrounded by fields that have not been included in the SHELAA previously. So the previous SHELAA was issued whilst I was portfolio holder. I'm very aware that the SHELAA is just a list of areas that developers might want to put forwards for development, or owners might want to put forwards for development, rather than any sort of bearing on where our planning allocations might sit. However, this is the options paper. The previous SHELAA was issued after regular briefings with the parish councils, and that had enabled us to present the high level of the SHELAA to the parishes and take any questions on those in advance of the release of the SHELAA. It was done on purpose to reduce as far as possible that sense of nervousness and apprehension, and also enabled the parishes to be able to express and pass on that somewhat reassurance to their residents. I've not seen any attempt with the release of this SHELAA to do some such like that. In fact, it comes off the back of the local plan advisory group, which had led to concerned articles in the press about the intentions behind the local plan. And it also, as previously stated, comes off the back of the new white paper, which creates additional uncertainty. And I thank Councillor Porter for explaining why the options paper isn't here at the start of this meeting. But the lack of engagement is going to come with backlash to councillors and to this council. And there's going to be a lot of scaremongering, particularly on social media, I suspect. Whilst I'm pleased that bringing this updated SHELAA today is one step closer towards ensuring a continued position with regard to planning in our district, this has been done with a lack of regard for the situation surrounding it. I understand the separate circumstances, but it seems that the fear that this will make within our district, as clearly demonstrated by the public speakers this morning, is going to be unacceptable. And I'd urge you to consider the residents more and the parish councils during this process, being more open and transparent with them to try and bring them along with you rather than scare them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooke. And the final speaker this morning is Councillor Horrell.
Good morning, Councillor Thompson. Thank you for allowing me to address the Cabinet this morning. And thank you to the portfolio holder and for officers for all their work to date to produce the paper today. I know it is a very significant amount of work. For those who don't know me, I'm Councillor Caroline Horrell, leader of the Conservative councillors. And as a group, we understand the significance of the local plan process.
Yeah, hi, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor, hang on, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Evans, that's great that you're back in, and I will call you as soon as Councillor Horrell has finished speaking. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Caroline.
Thank you, Lucille. That's kind. So just to recap, I'm Councillor Caroline Horrell, leader of the Conservative councillors, and we understand the significance of the local plan process, which is why in early 2019, the Conservative administration set out their approach to the local plan and initiated evidence that would be required to meet the plan requirements. And indeed, we prepared the first draft of the SHELAA, which Councillor Brooke has already referred to. So how is it that some 18 months later, the development of the local plan for the Winchester district is in tatters? You delayed the production of the plan, changed the period for development, and now tell us we must tear up the process and start again. All this before the recent white paper consultations have concluded and the final views of government understood. It feels like a complete shambles, which makes us vulnerable as a district. Today you have published the SHELAA, offering the opportunity for over 44,000 houses in the district in a complete vacuum. And Councillor Porter, you and I have already talked about that potential vacuum. With no strategic issues options paper set out by the Liberal Democrat administration, we do not understand your intentions behind the plan. You could have published the SIO and for the public to have understood where we were before the white papers were published. You could have taken the public on the journey, on the new journey that we need to go on. Instead, you have left the sword of Damocles hanging over communities throughout the district. And this morning we have already heard of considerable concern from many of our communities. You have created fear amongst the public and left options hanging in the air. Whether it is a new town at Mitchell Devastation, referenced several times this morning, or 100 houses in Sparsholt, it shows a complete lack of leadership to not reveal your intentions to the residents of our district. If you, Councillor Porter, intend to cover our beautiful Hampshire downlands with houses, then stand up and say that openly. Show leadership and be counted. And then allow the Winchester City Council residents, parish councils, town councils, and all the interested parties, help them to understand those true intentions and let them put their views forward and participate in the conversation that we all need to have as a district. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horrell. I now call on Councillor Evans, who has managed to join the meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
We've had sort of ructions over lots of things this week because Councillor Lumbie, in his wisdom, cancelled Thursday's planning meeting. He doesn't know why he did it either, because it's not cancelled. So then somehow all my meetings got cancelled in my calendar. So I'd given up really on speaking, but I was pleased that I heard the end of Councillor Horrell's statement, because I think that was a little harsh really. It's not Councillor Porter's fault that COVID arrived and whatever, and that's held up the local plan. I've already been in touch with Councillor Porter and Adrian over correcting one of the errors in the issues and options. I've missed all the preamble, so I don't know what's going to happen to issues and options. But I wanted to ask about numbers. I spent all yesterday afternoon at the South Downs National Park, where I represent the City Council, and they will be not rewriting their local plan, but they are changing their local plan in the light of COVID, trying to help businesses to survive, and also in the light of the white paper, but that hasn't been discussed fully yet. And there's no doubt that the white paper is going to change everything. But what I wanted to ask was, yesterday numbers were quoted at the South Downs National Park, and forgive me if they are in the report, but I couldn't see there. All I could see on 9/12 was 666 dwellings per annum, but that's changed, has it now? Has that doubled, or that was my question? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Yes, that was the old number, and in fact, I know Councillor Porter will refer to this, but yes, the numbers have substantially increased. Not quite doubled under our calculations, but they are now much more substantial than that. So thank you very much, and thank you to all councillors who've made contributions. Councillor Porter, I wonder whether you might like to have a stab at responding to some of the questions that have been posed.
Yes, and thank you, Leader. I'm just going to say, from the point of view of neighbourhood plans, the new paper does include a lot about neighbourhood plans, and so one of the conversations we're going to be having again with parishes on the 21st of September, which is the date we've set for that meeting with parishes, is to discuss neighbourhood plans again with them, because previously they hadn't felt it was necessarily what was necessary, but it may be that that's what we have to go to this time. In the issues and options paper that we were planning, it was to go to 13,750 homes, of which 11,443 were already planned. So that's quite a modest increase by 2038. But actually we're being asked, if you do the calculations, they come out anything between 1,024 to 1,075. So that's an additional amount of 400 per year, and that would potentially start from 2021. So if you look to 2038, that's 17 times that, which that comes to 6,800 additional homes. The question that Mike Reid asked, or Councillor Reid asked, was about the 5-year land supply, and I'm going to ask one of the officers to talk about that in a little moment. And the detail of specific sites, and you're mentioning, Councillor Pearson, that there are some that are already built on. If you know any of those on that site that are already built on specifically, could you let the officer know, please? Because as far as I know, they're all new sites available for development.
Will do, Jackie.
And the tranche of houses filling gaps between villages is not a good idea. I've been a parish councillor, a city councillor and a county councillor, and I'm very well aware of what a local gap means to a community in particular. Councillor Brooke raised the areas that she said it was an options paper. It's not an options paper. It's a list of developers' wishes, and mentioned about no attempt to seek support for the local plan from parishes. In actual fact, we've kept them up to date. We send out a local plan information. If parishes do want to know about their own area, they're very welcome to speak to us, but we have got another briefing on September the 21st. Councillor Horrell, I absolutely refute your comment that the local plan is in tatters. I absolutely refute it. The work has been going on, we have evidence work, and we're just about to produce the issues and options. But if we produce them saying that we only needed 2,300 homes, and then the reality was that in 2 months' time we need a lot more, the public would have been completely confused. It's difficult enough subject anyway as planning. We need to have a very clear message for the public, and at the moment the public message is we're expecting to have a very low number, and now that number, because of the national white paper, is going to be much higher. This is something that's been imposed upon us by a Conservative government, but I do appreciate that everybody needs a home to live in. What we do need to make sure, and I've always thought of the local authority as somewhat of a disruptor to the housing market, in the sense that we want to build homes that are affordable for local people to live in. And I only hope that we can remain as a disruptor, making sure that local people have homes in the future. Councillor Evans, just to take on your point, the MPPF will have an increased, it's expected that the MPPF will have an increased value, and as chairman of the planning committee, you will know exactly how we have to be compliant with the MPPF. I'm expecting that it will make it very clear to all of us how much the national policies will take away those devolved decisions that we have already. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Members of Cabinet, have you any questions? If not, Councillor Todd.
Yes, it was a point. I have a question for Councillor Porter, possibly for officers. I mean, a point was raised by Patrick Davis that this document could potentially open the door to unsuitable development. Now, that wasn't my understanding of it, precisely because it makes no decisions about allocating options. It's an evidence collection document. But can you give some more clarity and confirmation on that, just so that we're absolutely clear that it poses no risk at all in terms of the planning process?
Yes, actually, I'm going to ask. I'm just looking at who's in the meeting.
Mr. Fox. Mr. Fox is at the meeting.
Thank you.
So I think he might be able to help. Mr. Fox.
Good morning, everybody. Adrian Fox, the Strategic Planning Manager. Yes, to pick up on Councillor Todd's question, it is purely a list of sites that have been put forward by developers, land promoters. And we are very much an open, transparent council. And I think, therefore, if people put forward sites, I'm aware that some parish councils are aware what sites have come forward. So I think in terms of being open, transparent, this is a list of sites. It is only purely a list of sites. No decisions have been made on those sites in terms of which ones are suitable or not suitable. It is purely a list of sites. So it's got no kind of status above that. We're required by government under the current system to prepare the SHELAA, and there's very prescribed routes that we have to follow. If I could just pick up on a point raised by Councillor Reid, if I can, about how vulnerable the local plan is. At the moment, the two government consultation documents, the first one which ends at the end of September, there is no details on the transitional arrangements for the new figure, which obviously the new figure under the new revised standard methodology is the 1,024 dwellings per year. There is no detail in the document about when that figure would actually kind of kick in, when it would actually happen. And that's all I can say at the moment. Obviously, in terms of our current 5-year housing land supply, we're using the current figure that we've got. But obviously, I would encourage everybody to respond to that consultation, because the devil's in the detail with those consultations documents. So I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cabinet, any further questions before we go into debate? No? Okay. Debate.
I saw Councillor Todd's hand, Chair.
Councillor Todd?
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Horrell raised all kinds of issues about the new planning system and implied that this was in some way a Liberal Democrat issue. And I think it's useful maybe to lay out the facts that are in front of us as far as we can see them. On August the 6th, the Conservative government published changes to the planning system, which, despite its boring name, is the document that changes the formula for the number of houses expected by each local authority. And there's a consultation going with that, and it closes on October the 1st. So I've spent the weekend with Excel and calculated the Conservative government's formula. It's a 55% increase on our old estimate. And the Conservative government's proposals for housing numbers means we would need to have more than 1,000 houses a year extra. Now, the way the Conservative Party has designed the formula is deliberately skewed towards commuter areas like Winchester, far higher than expected household growth. So it's a conscious political Conservative Party decision to do that. And to give some perspective on how high that 1,000 houses a year is, I've also worked out the numbers for every single district in Hampshire and for Portsmouth and for Southampton. And to be clear, the 1,000 houses a year is more than Portsmouth, more than Southampton, more than East Hampshire, more than Havant, more than Eastleigh. In fact, it's more than every other district in Hampshire. The Conservative Party's proposal is that Winchester takes the fastest growth in Hampshire. More than 10,000 houses in 10 years, more than 15,000 houses in 15 years, nearly 4,000 more than planned over the next 10 years, nearly 6,000 more than planned over the next 15 years, 2% growth a year, every year, 20% more houses in 10 years, 29% more in 15 years, much more than the forecast growth in households that we were planning on. Those are Conservative Party numbers and Conservative Party proposals. There's also a second proposal for the South Hampshire Green Belt, which would remove our discretion as a council to fairly and equally evaluate all options in the district and potentially force all those 10 or 15,000 houses into Winchester and the communities north and west of Winchester. And that is backed by local Conservative MPs. So the Conservative Party isn't just fighting to massively increase housing numbers, they're fighting to put all those numbers into Winchester, into Wanston and Micheldever, into Hursley, into the north and west of the district area. Those are Conservative Party numbers, Conservative Party plans, and it's striking that Councillor Horrell refused to oppose any element of them. So Councillor Adams from Micheldever Parish Council asked, what more do we need to do? Well, I would strongly advise anybody who's concerned about the overall level, and there are cases that we need to build more housing in this country, but who's concerned about the overall level and a system that heavily skews towards an area like Winchester, respond to the government's consultation. And I'd also suggest that people think very hard about a broad brush plan like a green belt for South Hampshire, because that combined with the national park effectively risks that all the extra housing needs to go to the north and the west of the district, Winchester, Wanston and Micheldever, Hursley and other such areas. And so I would urge, if people want a second thing to do, I think it's very important that everybody on the call makes sure that those people backing that scheme know exactly what they're backing and what the consequences of that might be, and maybe have a word with some of the cheerleaders for that scheme who are basically saying most of the development needs to happen in the areas that people have expressed concern about today.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. Any further debate? No, I think it's probably all been said. Councillor Porter, you're on screen. Do you want?
I've no further things to say. No, thank you.
No. Okay. In that case, Cabinet, we will move to the recommendations on page 20 of the agenda pack. There's just two there that we approve the Strategic Housing and Employment Land Availability Assessment, the SHELAA, which is attached at Appendix 1, and it is published as part of the evidence base for the new local plan. And 2, delegate authority to the Strategic Planning Manager in consultation with the portfolio holder for the built environment and wellbeing to make any necessary edits and minor alterations prior to the publication of the SHELAA. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
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 That's lovely. Thank you very much. That is agreed. Thank you. We now need to invite Councillor Cutler to come back.
I've messaged him immediately.
Oh, you have. OK, thank you very much. And we move to item number 9, which is provision of a decked park and ride car park at the Vaultex site, and it's on pages 341 to 364 of our agenda pack. Councillor Todd, could you please introduce the paper?
Certainly, Leader. Very happy to. This is very much a good news proposal from this council. We've won a bid from the EM3 Local Enterprise Partnership, the so-called LEP, to build a new decked park and ride car park on the former Vaultex site. And this paper effectively asks for agreement to the practical steps to make this happen in line with the challenging timing that is part of the bid proposal. this new park and ride is an important part of our contribution to the City of Winchester's movement strategy. It's part of making it easy and pleasant to access our city, but doing so, making it easier to do so in a more environmentally sustainable way. It makes it cheap and easy to park and walk or park and cycle without having to drive into the centre. And aside from being an easy site to walk or cycle into the centre, it will also be an important support to the new leisure centre. It supports our environmental objectives by including electric vehicle charging. So all in all, it's a very good scheme that's been put together at high speed by city officers during the course of COVID. So the bid was submitted to the local enterprise partnership in March. It was won in principle, supported in principle in May, backed by Cabinet in June. And now that the money has been released to the local enterprise partnership, it's a project that we can get on with. I would stress, actually, it's important to highlight partnership working. The city officers obviously led on this and did a lot of work on it, but they were helped and supported by other members of the movement strategy team in putting the bid together. The challenge and the reason why we need to make a decision today is that the timing is challenging. It all has to be done by January 2022, and this paper highlights how we're going to do it and the procurement route that we're going to take. In looking at procurement, obviously, based on some of the experience we've had with procurement in the past, it's very important that it's legally robust. It's equally important, given that it's a bid condition, that we are able to meet the project timelines for delivery. We wanted a system that had robust and transparent supplier monitoring processes in place, providing reassurance the public money is not being put at risk, and have minimum targets for social values, which align with our council's procurement and management, procurement and contract management. The proposal is that we use a so-called framework agreement, where a lot of the procurement work has already been done. We've identified a partner. We've identified a partner that most importantly meets the criteria that I highlighted, but also lets us deliver the project in time. So the procurement route is the Procurement Hub Major Projects Framework, and if you look at the appendix, you'll see why that one was chosen in opposition to all the others, and the appropriate supplier that comes out of that framework is Wilmot Dixon. So that's the proposal that's in front of everybody today, I strongly support this. It's part of the movement strategy. It's part of what we're trying to do with the parking and access strategy. It's part of helping to make traffic in the city more environmental, giving people options to park further out and then walk in. And so I would ask Cabinet to support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. I have one councillor who's indicated a wish to speak on this, and it's Councillor Miller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I am delighted to see this project started when the Conservatives were in power make this step forward. The site was bought with a view to providing extra park and ride facilities near the centre of the city. One of the steps necessary for the city economically and to support the direction shown as necessary very early on in the movement strategy. I would like to congratulate all the officers involved in this project, the estates team for the hard work in securing the purchase of the site and their work necessary to get this project this far. Also to congratulate all the officers involved in securing the LEP grant and for the extra money supplied by the government. So I fully support this paper and hope Cabinet will as well. So thank you very much. Keep it nice and short because Councillor Todd has covered most of it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller, and thank you for your support. This really is a very good news story, and we're delighted that we've received the grant from the LEP. And yes, this paper, as Councillor Todd has already said, sets out how we can achieve the decked car park at the Vaultex. Cabinet members, any questions on the paper? No, I'm not seeing any. Any further debate? No. Okay.
So sorry, Councillor.
Oh, Okay.
Sorry, Leader. I would like to ask a...
Yes.
I'd like to ask
Sorry.
a question, if I may.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson first. Your hands have only just appeared on my screen, so it's a little bit delayed. Councillor Ferguson first.
Thank you, Leader. Sorry for the confusion. The hand went up immediately, but there obviously must be a delay from where I'm sitting to where you're sitting. I just had a couple of questions which I wondered whether either Councillor Todds or officers could clarify. I just wondered if we could say a little bit more about how this procurement framework will give us an opportunity to create local jobs or training opportunities in the district. I'm very aware of the impact on COVID on employment right now and the number of people who are losing their jobs in the district. And I'd like to know whether this is an opportunity for us through this procurement framework to actually perhaps create some local jobs and also training opportunities, and within that, what opportunities there will be also for local procurement of parcels of work within the construction. Again, how can we support those as far as possible, going to local businesses to support us as we go through our COVID recovery? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Todd?
I mean, this is very much part of the ethical framework that we're working to, but I suspect it might be one on the more detailed question. I don't know if there's an officer who wants to answer that.
Okay, Laura Taylor will chip in.
You're muted.
Still can't hear.
Still can't hear you. The chairperson is muted, so we can't hear you.
Okay.
Let's try that one again. Councillor Todd, Councillor Ferguson, thank you. Although I don't have the specific details of the procurement.
Oh, no. Lost you again.
Go again.
Muted again.
Third time. So, councillors, thank you, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Todd. Although I don't have the details of the procurement package, we are of course aware of the commitment of Wilmot Dixon to supporting employment within our district, and they run a particular academy as part of the build of the leisure centre, in which they do offer training and opportunities to local young people and folk who are not in employment. So I'm sure that could continue. And of course, as part of that leisure park build, they have a strong commitment to sustainable development and ethical building, and are sourcing local materials where possible. So I'm sure with that provider, we can have a sensible conversation to maintain that commitment during the build of Vaultex. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Porter, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, my question is that we saw the station car park go up really quickly. Can we be assured that the Vaultex won't look like the station car parks?
Councillor Todd.
Yes, indeed we can, because one of the savings that they made on the station car park was not to have any cladding of any kind, and that is very much not our plan. We've been looking at how it is possible to make this kind of car park more attractive. Our preferred option, which we've asked to be explicitly explored in the plan, is a live green wall, effectively as part of the design, and in order to reduce the visual impact, which, as we know, the station approach car parks are particularly horrible. But we certainly intend to do a proper job of pulling together a plan and sharing it with people in advance, so that people can see that we're not about to do a Southwest Trains on everybody in terms of the new car park. So that's very much part of it. One point, the social value, I mentioned in passing that when we were assessing the contracts, that the social value targets that was part of the entire framework. The main social value in terms of contract value is actually relating to local employment, apprenticeships, support for the local economy, and that's very much how they frame the social value that's outlined in the contract. So when we were talking about social value, that's primarily the social value that's being talked about, and so it's one of the reasons why we're happy to go with this framework agreement, because we are aware and keen that it is feeding back into the local, support the local young people and to support the economy as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. Councillor Ferguson, you still have your hand up. Is that an old hand?
Apologies, old hand.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any further questions? No. Any debate? No. In that case, could we move straight to the recommendations? They're on page 342 of the agenda pack. There are far too many for me to read out. Cabinet, are we agreed with the recommendations as set out on page 342?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. That is agreed. And thank you everyone for your contributions. We now move on to item number 10, which is commercial rents, deferrals and abatements. And I'm calling on Councillor Cutler to introduce the paper, please.
Thank you, Leader. The Cabinet meeting on the 21st of May approved a process for considering requests for rent abatements from the Council's commercial tenants for the March quarter for tenants unable to trade during the lockdown. 48 such requests were approved, totalling £226,000. While the requirement for the further ongoing abatements is much reduced, requests for abatements of 22,000 have been received so far for the June to September quarter. And so there is still a need to have a mechanism in place to help tenants in difficulty. This paper proposes extending the scheme to March 2021 to enable the Rent Abatement Panel to advise and make recommendations to the Section 151 officer. While there may be some justification for further abatements, it's thought that agreeing deferrals for tenants is going to be a more preferable solution to help with cash flow. The paper also recommends the write-off of a rent arrears of 52,432, recommends that should be approved. This figure relates to a tenant which is no longer trading. The figure quoted is inclusive of VAT, so the value to the council is £43,693. The write-off is necessary to enable the speedy reletting of the property. Detail of this is available in the exempt appendix. I ask Cabinet to support the recommendations contained in this paper.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. Councillor Miller, I believe you wish to speak on this item.
No, in fact, I haven't read it again, so thank you very much. No, I think it's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for your support. Cabinet members, obviously there's an exempt appendix to this, and I'm just wondering whether we need to go into exempt. Are we content with the recommendations as set out, or do we have any questions on the exempt paper? I think that will need us to go into exempt. Councillor Lerney. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. I don't have any questions on the exempt paper. I just wanted to say that as the portfolio holder for asset management, while this paper has come from Councillor Cutler, that I'm strongly supportive of the approach being taken in this paper, and would recommend that Cabinet agree all the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Leader. I also fully support this paper, and I think it's going to be important as we head into the winter period. I know from speaking to various hospitality businesses in Winchester that they are very concerned about what will happen as we head into the winter and they're no longer able to socially distance outside. And so I think being mindful of that, it's very important that we maintain this policy in place, and I strongly support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. Any further questions or debate? Nobody has indicated they wish to raise anything under exempt. Oh, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. I just also wanted to press my support for this paper. I think this mechanism that we've put in place to help our council tenants, our commercial tenants, during this really difficult period of COVID-19 has been, really almost invaluable to them. The rent abatement has been extremely important to a lot of our local businesses, and the compassionate approach that we're continuing to take going forward, supportive approach to helping those businesses not only survive through the winter months, but survive through the next year of the COVID uncertainty is going to be really important. So I fully support this paper because it supports local business and it supports our approach to working in partnership with them to get them through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. I think then, Laura Taylor would like to say a few words on.
Yes, if I may, forgive me, members, I am just a little late in speaking just at this item. And of course, the recommendation is to continue and with the proposal until March 2021. I would just like to be sure that members are clear that in paragraph 2.5, the proposal is that a deferred payment option will be the primary offer made to businesses over the next period, subject to individual circumstances.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. Cabinet members, are we content then, and can we agree the recommendations on page 365?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. That is all agreed. So thank you. The very last item on our agenda is to note the items on the forward plan for September 2020. Are we happy to note those?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Noted. Noted.
Yeah, noted.
Noted.
Thank you very much, and that is the end of our business. So thank you very much for joining us today, for everybody, and to all the public speakers and obviously councillors' representations. Thank you for joining us and making your comments, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.